All right, if I could have your attention, please. I am supposed to provide a brief introduction for someone who really needs no introduction. Tony Cupit, who's going to talk to us about faith through memorable people. And if I were to stand here and read you a list of his accomplishments, I'd use up all the time and we wouldn't have any time left for Tony to talk. So without any further eloquence, I give you our man from down under, Tony Cupit.
Thank you. We're going to make a presentation to Brian Maxwell if he's here. Is Brian there?
I think he'll be in a minute.
Okay. Well, we could do it. We'll do it at the end. Okay. Well, thank you for coming. I apologise for much of what I will say this morning or this afternoon will be autobiographical. The topic assigned to me, how certain identities have strengthened my faith, means inevitably the story of these certain identities are my story. I've listened with great interest for the last 2 weeks to 10 or 11 of you who shared your stories and your lives in such a way that it provided a context for the subjects you're addressing. My story is fairly well known, I understand that. I thought I would not need to explain myself. However, I realise that some newer folks probably see me as that elderly gentleman sitting up the back of the room with his lovely wife. That's all they know about me, and I'm happy to be well known that way. However, while many of you here have known Margaret and I very well for the last 30 years, you haven't known us for the 50 years before that, before those 30 years. We lived in Australia and PNG in those years, so it's not likely you would have known us. I won't give a detailed account of those 50 years, of course, but some signposts that I have encountered along the way may help us understand better the talk I'm going to give. Please feel free to interrupt at any time. I don't want it to be a monologue. Let's have a conversation together if we wish, and there could be time at the end of the lecture to speak further anyway. I first attended Sunday school when I was 7 or 8 years old. 80 years later, I'm still in church. My dad was away for the duration of World War II, and Mum looked after 3 of us on a service person's pension for those war years. My parents were not churchgoers, but Mum sent us to Sunday school to the Haberfield Baptist Church when we were just young boys, where 2 previous generations of Cupits had worshipped. I committed my life to Jesus Christ as a young teenager at a boys' gymnastic club devotional session which preceded the gymnastics. A great youth leader, Jim Houghton, and a saintly old Sunday school teacher, Mr. Lyle, as well as my pastor, or 2 or 3 pastors, guided me towards a solid faith. When I was in my late teens, I sensed a calling to be a minister of the gospel. I believe God was calling me into ministry. I entered the Baptist Theological College in Sydney, and while studying theology and attendant subjects for 4 years, 3 of those years were spent in pastoral work. 3 of those years, first of all, I had taste of ministry of a very green pastor of a fairly newly planted congregation in a low socio-economic area of Sydney. A second experience, before we went to Papua New Guinea, I was pastor of the Thornley Baptist Church, a slightly larger church, during 1964, going back that long ago. Having completed my study and having been a pastor, I was ordained, as we say in Australia, to the ministry of the Word and Sacrament. Very, very important, that ordination in Australian Baptist Church context. During my many years of ministry, I've been fortunate to travel to many countries and to meet countless people. some well known and significant, some not well known but still significant. I met some outstanding world leaders, but it might be looked upon as name dropping if I begin with them. So at least I can minimise that temptation by briefly mentioning those worthies at the end of the talk. Many people have been vital.
Can I just ask Caleb?
Caleb, you're needed.
I had this running early this morning and I just can't get it to go.
It was going early, not going now for some reason. Fortunately, we're not up to the point where we need them, so let's continue. Many people have been vital to my spiritual journey. I'm so indebted to my family, notably Margaret, with her practical advice and enlightened faith, my three children, 2 boys and a daughter, who keep me grounded and keep me humble. My 9 grandchildren, who tend to ask me tough questions about God and faith. Also, I'm indebted to many, many close friends, some of whom are in this room today. They will know who I'm talking about. And pastors and teachers who have inspired me along that journey. But today I'm going to concentrate on 8 global Christian leaders, most of whom became my friends, whose lives and witness has coloured my thinking about faith and inspired me to seek to live more worthily. I'll not try to explain exactly how each sister or brother inspired me. Just telling their stories, I think, will be adequate. My context, like my brother Elijah, my context throughout my ministerial life has been the Baptist community and the Baptist church. So what I say will certainly reflect that. First, Reverend Dr. Wati Iyer from Nagaland in northeast India. Nagaland was evangelised by American Baptist missionaries, and Nagaland almost certainly has the largest concentration of Baptist people within its borders of anywhere in the world, even more than Texas or Mississippi. Almost 90% of Naga's over 2 million people are Baptist, whose beautiful churches adorn the countryside throughout Nagaland. I met a young Wati Iyer in 1992 in my first visit to the Naga tribes people. Wati had recently graduated from an American college, I think it was in Chicago, and upon his return to Nagaland in 1991, established the Oriental Theological College in Dimapur in Nagaland. 1 or 2 people here have been with me to Dimapur in Nagaland. And that college has sent countless young men and women to serve God throughout in Nagaland, but also in adjoining states in northeast India. As well, Wati has been the leader of the Naga Reconciliation Forum, and as such has been a remarkable peace advocate for his people, including the years when the Nagas were trying to secede from India. They didn't manage to do that.
He had anything to do with what Elijah was talking about this morning.
Yes, I think so, because Elijah sort of came to the end of the time when things have re-emerged, but Wati was involved in the peace situations leading up to that. There was trouble between the Nagas living in Nagaland and the Nagas who had emigrated to Manipur, which Elijah was talking about this morning, and there was trouble between those. And over the years, Wati has been the key peace advocate to try and bring peace to those warring Naga factions. It sounds like it's still going on. Not necessarily between those 2 groups, but certainly there's a lot of oppression of Baptist people in Manipur today, and it's a great concern to us all. Wati was and is a man of peace and worked tirelessly for peace. Number 2, the Reverend...
Can I say something about Wati?
Yeah, for sure.
Wati could have had a very comfortable life living in America. He was well qualified at an American college, and I think his wife sometimes really wanted to come back to America, but he decided he wanted to work for his people, bring peace to his country, and stayed in Nagaland.
You mentioned his wife. His wife was one of the speakers at one of our world congresses, and that's a very great honour because there's only one person from all of Asia gets to preach on a night of a congress. And what his wife was, did you know that, Elijah? Yeah, she was a remarkable person too. Secondly, the Reverend Palage Latana from Zambia. When I was visiting Zambia in the 1970s, Palage Latana was a young Christian leader of immense ability matched by his essential goodness. Palage comes from good stock. His father, the Reverend Bob Latana, was he's pictured there, he was the highly respected church leader among the lumber people in Zambia for many, many years. He and his wife had 9 children, and each one carried the essential dignity and bearing of their father Bob and the mother. Palage was the youngest of the 9. He may have been the most impressive Baptist leader I ever met in Africa, and I have made many trips to Africa. Did you know Palage? He's just a little bit before your time. A colleague and I, during a visit to Zambia, made a courtesy call to the most influential, powerful person in the region, Chief Mushili IV. And though he was not a Christian, he told us on that visit that he was very proud of young Palage and the way he's looking after his churches. And this was the chief of the area calling those his churches. In my judgment, Palage was not only an outstanding leader, he was a good man and an Israelite in whom there was no guile. Third, and these are in no specific order, Sister Kay Mulabisa from Papua New Guinea. In the 1960s, there was a little girl called Kay Margor running around in and out of our home in Papua New Guinea, where we lived for 7 years.
I used to teach her.
Sorry? Oh, Margaret used to teach her. Her father, Margor Mulabisa, was a strong Christian leader and a good friend. When we caught up with Kara in the 1980s, she had changed her name to Kay and was a young Inga showing considerable promise as a community and church leader. She received a scholarship to do a short course of study in the United Kingdom, which gave her the inspiration and the resources to establish birthing houses in her rural region in Papua New Guinea among the Inga people. This initiative enabled Inga mothers to have their babies in a clean building and with proper facilities and equipment, rather than going out into the bush to have the child, which had been the traditional custom. Kay spent a lifetime serving her people with her strong faith and her leadership, and with the birthing houses, which became a much needed and effective ministry, of course. She led a group of women, Inga women, to the BWA Congress in Birmingham in 2005.
And Hawaii and Argentina.
Yes, her death was a great loss to the Inga people. She was also actually a leader of the Southwest Pacific Baptist Fellowship, so she was quite a considerable person. Fourth, Dr. Pradip Nazari from India. Do you know Dr. Pradip? The most outstanding and capable Asian Baptist person, in my opinion, that I've ever met is Dr. Pradip Nazari from Tukrajara in Assam in India.
Marilyn's met her, but Marilyn's not.
Marilyn's not here, so that's no help. He is one among many very impressive leaders among the Boro people in Assam. You might remember a Boro church leader, Prosenjit Bosamatari, came and spoke from our pulpit. I remember saying, don't try and call his name, just call him brother, because the Boros are exceptional people. He's one, but Dr. Pradip is outstanding. There's no more worthy person in Asia, I believe, in terms of Baptist leadership than Dr. Pradip. He's a medical doctor who stands out by his strength of character and his magnetic personality. It's noteworthy, like Margaret was mentioning about one other, Dr. Pradip could have moved to a big city in India and gone to a big hospital and made a lot of money. Instead, he eschewed riches to go back to his people, his tribal home, where he converted a small mission hospital or small mission centre into a very, very great hospital today. He is a delight to be with and certainly challenges me and others with his life of service to Christ and his own Boro people. Fifth, Victor Samuel Gonzalez from Cuba. I know you know him. Christians in Cuba have traditionally been second-class citizens in their own country. Under Fidel Castro, and while the revolution was in full swing, all the Baptist pastors were incarcerated into concentration camps. These are better days today, though restrictions are still placed on the vibrant Baptist churches and communities, but they have this outstanding leader in Victor Samuel Gonzalez, who is both a leading surgeon in Cuba and the head of Cuban Baptists, centred in Havana. I read recently in The Economist, that a top surgeon like Victor Samuel could earn 100 times more in an overseas hospital than the paltry amount he gets as a top surgeon in Havana. But he stays on. His leadership, medical skill and dignity means the Cuban communist regime respects Victor Samuel, and this helps protect the churches. But he walks a tightrope in a country where new churches can't be established and the existing churches are always under close scrutiny. It certainly helped when the Baptist World Alliance appointed Victor Samuel as one of its vice presidents representing the Caribbean. I happened to be in Havana when the regime had a ceremony to applaud Victor Samuel for this honour. Victor Samuel is a great example, and he was given this honour by the Cuban government, and they said the honour is Cuba's. That sort of reflected it somehow onto Cuba. But he's a great example of faith and witness in a very difficult and suffocating communist environment. Sixth is Leena Lavanya from India. We all know Leena well. When people visit Leena in Andhra Pradesh or just meet her in any particular context, they usually believe they are in the presence of a very special spiritual leader. We've marvelled at her genuine faith, her belief and practice of prayer, her indefatigable energy, her accomplishments and her service to the poorest of the poor in rural India. Ron's one who's been there with Leena. A number of you here have been, and I'm sure they would certainly back up what I'm saying. In 25 years, Leena has planted over 80 rural congregations. She's trained men and women to pastor these churches, and while preaching good news in Jesus Christ in the villages, has provided medicines, blankets, food, economic assistance, counselling to struggling believers and to non-believers.
She also had the BWA.
Oh, that's right. She received the Human Rights Award from the BWA, which is a very great honour too. Many nights Leena drives out to faraway villages to bring hope and empowerment to village people. Leena is also responsible for the marvellous ministry she has to people with leprosy, HIV/AIDS patients, orphans with AIDS, people with TB and with dementia. Seventh, Marbasi Akolo. Marbasi is an outstanding man and Christian leader from the remote highlands of Papua New Guinea. He never attended school. When the missionaries came to the Enga area in 1949, Marbasi was just too old to go to one of the village schools which taught in Kakarenga, which proliferated all through the area very quickly. And he was too old to go to the English-speaking school, which was at Lumus, where we lived, because he was just too old. Marbasi is one of the most intelligent men I have ever met, one of the most intelligent persons I've ever encountered. He picked up English without any formal schooling, and he became my main colleague in translation of the Enga New Testament. and it was into his Kakaringa language, from English to Kakaringa language. After we left Papua New Guinea, after Margaret and I left Papua New Guinea, came back to Australia, he spent his life preaching in the villages, being a very respected church leader, and continuing on with translation, particularly the abridged Old Testament, which is also now in Kakaringa. He's a very revered man, he's a very old man. Marbasi is a brother who I love and with whom I stand in awe, giving his gifts of scholarship and essential humility. Eighth, Peter Mitskovich from Russia. Peter Mitskovich is president of the Russian Union of Evangelical Christians Baptist, in a long line of outstanding, courageous Baptist leaders who've led their people despite communist and post-communist oppression. I don't think Luba's here, is she? But Luba would know some of those older great leaders that I mentioned. Baptist leaders have needed to be courageous and wise, because under communism, of course, they were under enormous pressure for 70 years. But even today, the nationalistic Russian Orthodox Church is not sympathetic to the Baptists, nor is the present regime. Peter Mitskovich has led Russian Baptists since 2018 with courage and wisdom. He's president of the Baptist Union. He's a medical doctor, and he's president of the Baptist Theological Seminary in Moscow. So he's quite a man. He deserves our...
Last year he was at the Congress.
Yes.
And because we knew them he and his wife quite well, I asked him, how is it? He says, just going back to the old regime. And it was so sad, because he actually stood up against the war. But he probably has to be pretty quiet these days, because it would be very hard for him.
And for his churches. Yeah, my last sentence I have, he's a great man deserving our prayers in these troubled times for both Russian Baptists and Ukrainian Baptists. Of course, in one sense, they are the same people. They've been under the same sort of, in the same sort of consortium for years and years. So both the Russian Baptists and the Ukrainian Baptists need our prayers. In no way do these 8 saintly people exhaust the list of believers who've influenced my life. I could just as easily have chosen 8 other wonderful people. They'll just be names to you, to most of you. Paul Messiza from South Africa, Thomas Mackey from Argentina, Knut Wolfermann from Denmark, Bill Brown from Melbourne, Ron Bobo from Kansas City, Denora Mendez from Mexico, Beth Eccles from McLean, and Dick Coffin from Canada. We realise there are numerous people who influence all of us more than we perhaps realise. Can we have those photos up again, Lon? I've chosen... Okay. Or we have them later. Do it later.
All the 8, yes.
Yeah, do it later. These people in turn, Palage, who typifies goodness.
Oh, you won't be one.
That's all right, no, that's okay. Kay, who typifies leadership. Pradip, who typifies optimism. Victor Samuel, who typifies wisdom. Lena, who typifies vision. Marbasia, who typifies holiness. And Peter, who typifies courage. And I thank God for all those men and women have taught me over the years. Some of those are hardly known outside their own environment and culture and countries. The following are some of the luminaries I have met who are well-known international figures, whose names known to thousands, some to millions, but who, with very notable exceptions, if you met them in the street, they would be just like any other people. They're just people with all the trappings. Some of them were dedicated Christ followers, some of them were not. Again, in no special order, I met Archbishop Desmond Tutu, a dynamic African church leader during the time of apartheid, which he denounced over his lifetime. He spoke to a small group of us at the Baptist World Alliance Council meeting in Harare in South Africa in in Africa, not South Africa. He was a courageous prelate during the years of apartheid and beyond, a close associate of Nelson Mandela, an international spokesperson for the African situation, the South African situation after apartheid was denounced. Jimmy Carter, you know that name. I was privileged to meet Jimmy Carter on 4 different occasions. He was a Christian gentleman and a recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize in 2002. President Carter, after his presidency finished, worked for peace throughout the world and got his hands dirty working for Habitat for Humanity. President Carter is a Baptist Sunday school teacher who throughout his life and his later years continued to teach Sunday school in his local church. I met the most popular... Have you got them up, have you? Oh, I didn't know they were up. Well, this photo is interesting. As you can see, it's President Carter. That's the most powerful man in the world, the most powerful man at the time in the Baptist World Alliance, the most powerful man in the American Baptist churches, the most powerful man in the Southern Baptist churches, having to sit and listen to me giving a talk about the Baptist Human Rights Award. So I thought that was rather cute that even Jimmy Carter had to listen to me. I met the Prime Minister of Nigeria. Nigeria is the most populous country in Africa, and Olusegun Obasanjo was a strong Christian leader. I conducted a Living Water conference in Kenya in 2003. It was a conference for all African Baptist leaders throughout the nation. This powerful Nigerian leader not only attended, he spoke to the conference, and this was to the delight of all the Africans that were there. He was a big man in Africa. He was a striking man and quite open about his Christian faith. President Bill Clinton, a true politician. President Clinton shook hands, looked you in the eye, and gave the impression you mattered. A few BWA leaders, including me, met President Clinton in the White House, where we spoke to him for about 30 minutes. He talked to us about his visit to Russia. It was obviously very meaningful to him. He actually spoke in the pulpit of the First Baptist Church, Moscow, which many visitors to Russia actually speak at. Billy Graham, and I also did, but I'm one of them. We prayed with him, but to be even-handed, Margaret shook hands with George W. Bush.
Across the street when I was working here. Where's Diane? Do you remember that day, Diane? Yes.
Pope John Paul. In my role as Secretary to the Interchurch Commission of the Baptist World Alliance, I led delegations of Baptist theologians and historians to the Vatican on a few occasions. We met with members of the Pontifical Council for Church Unity. My counterpart in the Vatican for these consultations, Monsignor John Rodano, arranged for Margaret and me, along with a short line of people, as guests to meet Pope John Paul. Andrew Peacock, now that's a name few of you will know. He was the leader of the opposition in Australia for many years. He was a very influential Australian politician. The BU of A, the Baptist Union of Victoria headquarters, of which I was the executive officer at the time, was in Mr. Peacock's electorate in Melbourne, and he called on our officers when I was the executive officer. He became the Australian ambassador to the United Nations, to the Australian ambassador to the United States in the 1990s. You talked a lot about Lebanon, Elijah. The Premier and Prime Minister of Lebanon, Emil Lahoud, served as President of Lebanon for 9 years, well before your time. Denton Lotz, the former General Secretary of the BWA, and I visited him in the palatial palace in Beirut. He was a Maronite Catholic, but we were there advocating for the smaller Christian communities suffering oppression in Lebanon. And the eighth one is Sister Emmanuel Sinquin from Cairo in Egypt. a woman whose ministry in the slums of Cairo deeply impressed Margaret, Natalie and I when we visited Egypt and met with her in 1985. Her main work over 22 years is an amazing testimony of Christ-like service. She lived alongside a huge garbage dump in a tiny shack, offering the love of Christ to slum dwellers by creating schools and medical clinics and empowering the community in a whole variety of ways. All these 8 well-known strategically positioned worthies I've just mentioned had the opportunity and the capacity to influence people. Some inspired me far more than others of those 8. But you soon realise when you meet them, despite their eminence, despite their trappings of power, despite their wealth, despite their reputations, all such highly regarded people are flawed. Except by the grace of God, aren't we all? But the first group I described, Wati Aya, Palij Latana, Kay Mulabiza, Pordip Nazari, Victor Samuel Gonzalez, Lena Lavagna, Mabase Kolo and Peter Miskovich are precious examples and an inspiration to me because each remind me of Jesus. Yet as well as these wonderful 8 godly people, there are saints of God to be found everywhere. The body of Christ, the church, is full of humble people whose lives are beautiful examples of people who love and serve their God and are trying to be like Jesus. The memories of people we recall from this church who've gone to glory continue to inspire us. Perhaps those sitting in front of you in the Sunday morning service or behind you, perhaps members of our Sunday school classes, or those counting the offering or putting the books away or serving in the Sunday school class or serving its share, may well be those who God has sent to love and inspire us. But the one whose example is most likely to humble and teach us is an old lady offering all she had, the never to be forgotten widow offering her widow's mite. She is possibly the most inspiring of us all, to us all. Amen. Now we have plenty of time for questions or comments or arguments or whatever you like.
Tony, I would just like to say that you and Margaret would be people that I think most of us would consider very inspiring.
Absolutely.
You influenced us greatly, and we deeply appreciate your presence.
Thank you, Shirley. I can assure you we don't feel that way. Yes, Charlotte?
Margaret's mother, Jean Norgate, who was a missionary with your father to inland China in the 1930s and, till the Chinese came in, is a great example, I think, of a Christian woman.
Tony wrote a book about
Stars in Your Crown.
Yes, stars lighting up the sky.
Right.
Shall I tell that story?
yes.
Please.
Someone wrote about the unknown people who I've met. Not these luminaries, but unknown people. I think Marbasir and Lena might have been in that book. Some of you have got it. But the last chapter I wrote was about Margaret's father and mother and their years in China during Japanese occupation and communist occupation. They were in prison, and they were great people. And Marilyn Scott was talking to, was it Marilyn? I think so. Was talking, or Melinda, one of the two of them was talking, I think it was Marilyn, talking to me afterwards saying, that was a great book, but that last chapter about those 2 people and the little girl who went across to school, I said, that was Margaret. Margaret! She hadn't picked up that this was the Norgays and Margaret was a little child. But yeah, that was interesting. Anyone else? It can't be the perfect lecture. But Brian, would you come forward? We have a little presentation explanation to give to you. Thank you, Elijah.
So, Brian, some years ago, when Tony was serving at the BWA, the the BWA went through a process of collecting hymns and other musical praise songs from around the world and putting them into a very unique book of world praise. So we thought we'd be honored if you would receive this and maybe even help lead the church in some of the songs down the road as the Spirit leads you. Thank you so much, Brian.
Thanks. I think you're going to have an early mark, folk. Oh, Jean.
Motor. I want to thank you, Tony, for helping me make the decision to join this church and serve as I might. And I was meeting with you and Brad in the Anacostia River, having many lunches and many meetings, coming through an understanding in my mind. I much appreciate
Thank you, Jim.
that you had that influence.
I remember those meetings with great pleasure. Thank you. You can go home.
I guess, Tony, I have a question.
Yes.
For you.
Stan?
Looking back of all these people you've met, obviously, you're continuing to meet people. So maybe you can, what do you compare? Do you compare other folks and their experiences? Are there new people that you're meeting that are inspiring you as well?
Well, I had the privilege, of course, for 15 years, or for 20 years actually, to be travelling and meeting these people. I just noticed when Elijah said something, it was come out of Romans 12, that those 8 I chose, and I certainly did not choose it for this reason, but every one of those was coloured. It was quite interesting. I did mention Bill Brown from Melbourne in one of those, but most of those, because I was travelling internationally. I'm not doing that so much now, so that opportunity is probably not there. But I have great memories of all those people and many others, but also of all these dear people in Maclean and Ashburton Church and all over the place. Our lives have been so blessed, really, and we love this church.
Tony, I'd love to share this story since this is your home church. Can I share a story? So 2005, I was a doctoral student at the University of Edinburgh. My dad was a first-generation Christian. I'd never heard of the Baptist World Alliance. I didn't know anything about Baptists around the world. But my wife's family have been Baptist forever. And so the BWA was having its Centennial Congress in Birmingham, England, and my wife's family said, you should go. And my mother-in-law said, I'll buy your registration tickets if you'll go. And my mother said, I'll buy your train tickets. So my mother and mother-in-law sent my wife and I to the BWA. We didn't know anybody. We were very, very poor, as many students are. And in fact, we were so poor, every morning we went to the grocery store, we bought a loaf of bread, and we made a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and carried it to the conference center. And that's what we would eat over the course of the day. And we met somebody who said, Tony and Margaret Cupit are having their retirement party. You should come, because Tony loves young people. And I said, who's Tony Cupit? And why would I'm not going to somebody's retirement party that I've never met before. And they said, well, there will be food. And I said, well, okay. And so it was such an awkward conversation. I stood in Tony and Margaret's reception line for their retirement and said, hello, I'm Elijah. I've never met you before, but I was invited. And I've enjoyed the food, and I've enjoyed the reception, and I was told to tell you that you like young people, and here I am. And Tony said, I do like young people, and we're so glad you're here. Send me an email. So a few weeks later, I sent him an email, and Tony very graciously put me onto a BWA commission because they wanted some more young people. And that's how I connected to the Baptist Run Alliance. It was Tony putting me on a commission from his retirement party. And the rest is, as they say, I got involved and stayed engaged, and the rest is history. But I'm here today because Tony and Margaret saw me as a young person and helped me connect. So Tony, once again, thank you so very much.
Well, the Lord's hand was in that, I think, because you've done a great job. Well, really, I think I should let you go.